morning and welcome to Rising. Thank you for joining us as we kick off Christmas week. We're feeling very holly and jolly in here, aren't we, Niall?
We are, as you can tell by our outfits, in fact, Robbie. Couldn't get any more festive than this.
You mean our outfits that closely resemble what we were wearing last week, Niall? What a mystery.
Coincidence. But there we go. Great to be with you on this holiday week, Robbie.
Such coincidence indeed. We're actually going to start today a little differently by discussing this past year's winners and losers, and I'm confining mine specifically to the media era of media. So I'm going to begin with a winner that I picked from this year. You know, we're avoiding the obvious, the Donald Trump, Kamala Harris. Sure. You know, that wouldn't be very inspired commentary. My big media winner of the year is a figure on CNN, one of their conservative pundits that they've had on for several years, but he's really just attracted my notice and greater prominence, I think, in the last year. Scott Jennings, who does a better job, in my view, better than I do, better job than anyone else in cable news, in media, of articulating, making the best possible case for conservative positions, sparring with liberal people who are also on those panels at CNN, and just eviscerating them. He's so good. He waits until they say something that is very that can easily be criticized, and then he springs into action. Have a clip of him from just last week discussing RFK Jr. Let's play that.
I'd like for science to go back to be science, because during COVID and during the last few years, science became religion. You know, when we're putting people up on pedestals and making prayer candles with their image on it and sewing pillows with their face on it, that's no longer science. That became a religion. So if I were in their shoes, I would say science is going to rule. Evidence-based decision-making is going to rule, and that's how we're going to make all our decisions.
I think that's fine.
So that is who I would describe as my media winner. You've probably seen clips of his by now as well.
I have. No, he's definitely become a lot more prominent. I've been aware of him in sort of the cable news landscape for quite a long time, and he has definitely sort of risen in profile, I would say. You know, his views don't necessarily align with mine, but I think he's an effective cable commentator. But one of the things I'm interested in is whether you think part of his prominence is CNN becoming more open to those kind of views being expressed than they were, certainly during the Trump first administration, when I think CNN did go in a more overtly liberal direction.
They are doing that. I credit them. I give them credit for doing so. They are clearly interested in featuring a somewhat wider range of discussions and debates. It's to the network's benefit. It has made for much more compelling television in recent weeks, those panels that Abby Phillips is doing.
No, I think any time that there is a genuinely diverse panel as opposed to just two people representing, you know, talking points and screaming those talking points at each other, I think is worthwhile. And that sort of exchange of different views, which of course we try to do here, has, I think, been missing on cable TV news in large part for a very long time. Things are becoming increasingly.
I noticed that, how the Hannity-Combs debate, crossfire style thing has gone virtually extinct on all cable news programs. It's just and the hosts bring on guests that they agree with. They make their case, and then the guest echoes what they say.
And everyone agrees how right they are. But
it's very different from what we are trying to do on Rising.
It is.
Who's your winner of the year?
So my winner of the year is being offered through gritted teeth on my part, but I would have to say Elon Musk, because he has actually been able to use his immense wealth as the richest man in the world to further advance his interests. Now, part of that was the outside spending on President-elect Trump's behalf. That was more than a $100 million bet on Elon Musk's part that paid off. In terms of his stewardship of X, formerly Twitter, one can have the whole argument about whether he has skewed it deliberately to be pro-conservative, or I would assume you think he has cracked down on a liberal bias from the old Twitter days. But the point is he has made it clearly more amenable to people who broadly share his view. And the thing that disconcerts me more than anything else about Musk is he has so many business interests before the government, primarily in relation to SpaceX, which is these massive contracts, some of which we know very little about the specifics as to what they're doing for the sort of defense establishment. So look, he has put an enormous amount of money and a significant amount of effort behind getting President-elect Trump elected, and that has worked for him, and I think he will presumably reap business benefits from that.
It was a good year for Elon Musk, yes. After being hesitant to wade so deeply into Republican Party politics and betting on the wrong horse to begin with, DeSantis, he then got all aboard Trump. The Twitter acquiring of that all has given him a very important level of influence over conservative media, over conservative politics, and has catapulted him to being in a very influential position in the actual administration. So I agree with you. It has been a productive year for him. We disagree on whether that's a good thing for the country. I would actually agree that it could be a bad thing if this ends up distracting Elon from the task of making us a multi-planet race. I'm all in support of SpaceX, multiplanetary species, I should say. So we can have a colony on Mars, that sort of thing. Let's keep building rockets and all of that, and not get too focused on I hope he makes the government more efficient, but just eliminating small aspects of fraud is not the best use of his time. The best use of his time is building rockets.
We differ a little on your level of enthusiasm for
space.
Elon, but that
going to
keeps
space.
life interesting. So let's get to the fun stuff, which is losers of the year. Robbie, who do you have in mind there?
Well, I was inclined first to pick myself, but no, no. The big loser of the year, I think, is, and some viewers might not like this because I know there is a certain amount of appreciation for her in conservative circles. Candace Owens is my loser of the year. She was ousted from the Daily Wire, where she was a very, very, very well-liked host with a huge platform. She continues to have a significant platform. Her videos get a lot of views. I think her tendency, and the tendency of a lot of people in conservative and contrarian media, to not buy into every establishment narrative, to ask questions, to be bold about re-examining things we think we all believe. I think that is a good tendency, and I support doing it. I think she's taken it too far and then some into just absolute. She was just named Anti-Semitism of the Year by one of those anti-Semitism awareness groups. I think a lot of what gets labeled, or maybe a lot might be wrong, too strong. Some of what gets labeled anti-Semitism by these types of advocacy organizations is bad faith and is wielded for a political cause, including a political cause of supporting Israel at all costs. That said, in her case, it is utterly, totally deserved. She has said numerous crazy things related to Jewish people over the years. Yeah. And I think it was absolutely time for conservative media to part ways.
I mean, the charge of anti-Semitism certainly seems to be, I would say, well, have more evidence behind it in her case. I'm sure she denies it, but nonetheless, there are a lot of extremely inflammatory things she has said. One thing I'm curious about in her case, and we'll get on to my losers in a second, but in her case, like, do you, first of all, do you know her personally?
Nope, I don't believe I've ever met her.
So I'm always curious with her whether she legitimately believes the stuff she says, or whether it's a sort of intentionally inflammatory performance art of a kind.
This is another thing with her. She is clearly and the viewers know I don't usually use uncompromisingly harsh language, even though it's not that I just disagree with her, but I've disagreed with her at every stage. She started out as just another liberal Democrat, or as a whole like anti-bullying online thing. She had that kind of grift. Then it's a conservative grift. Now it's now it's this thing. She's just looking for some new attitude to get clicks or whatever it is, and she's been successful at that, so good luck to her, but I don't care for her commentary.
I better
have.
Fair enough. I haven't either, so we're in agreement there, and we may be in agreement on my losers of the year, which we'll be fairly brief about. We're both, I suppose, transgressing the lines of our respective positioning around this desk, because my losers would actually be Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski of Morning Joe, who for years warned in the most hyperbolic terms possible about the dangers of a second Trump presidency. And once that presidency hoved into view on the horizon, very promptly wandered off to Mar-a-Lago to have a chat with him and to establish warm relations, or warmer relations than there had been. The one thing that I want to stress in naming them as losers is my objection isn't anti-Trump or pro-Trump. It's the idea that the whole thing appears fraudulent by the way they did.
Losers in the media sphere, but winners in love. So that's
good for you to take the romantic silver lining.
We'll be back with much more Rising right after this.